and thank you for joining us for another episode of Pink Perspectives, powered by the Pink Table Talk. My name is Dana Johnson, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome my two guests today from Washington, D.C. with the National Breast Cancer Coalition, Michelle Tregear and Melanie Wyne. Thank you, ladies, for joining me.
Thank you.
So we've had a little conversation behind the scenes, and I'd like to just kind of begin with, can you just give me a little bit of explanation as to what led you to your roles on the national level with NBCC? Michelle, we'll start with you.
Well, it's an interesting story. It started really with the fact that I had breast cancer. I was diagnosed with breast cancer more than 12 years ago. And at that time, as a young mother, I had no idea what was out there in the world of breast cancer. And I was very eager to get involved, but really didn't have the wherewithal to get involved. I just wasn't aware of what was going on in the world of advocacy. And about 2.5 years ago, I was just job opportunity came up for me. And it was quite a course change in what I was doing at the time, but it really brought back all the memories that I had of when I had breast cancer and when I was going through my treatment and really at that time wanting to be involved. And like I say, it just never happened. So I decided to take the opportunity. It was doing work that was very similar to what I was doing at the time. Although, I had no idea that I would be going to an organization like NBCC. So when the opportunity arose, I took it, and I've been happy that I did ever since. And it's really opened my eyes to the world of breast cancer advocacy. A very different story than Melanie.
Awesome. Melanie?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer about 4 years ago now. And so went through my treatment, finished my treatment, and at the time I'm a lobbyist. I've worked as a lobbyist for decades in the policy arena. And so once I had finished my treatment, I decided that I had skills that I could use to help advance the cause of breast cancer, the disease that I had just been dealing with, and I wanted to find an outlet to use those skills. So I just started doing some internet research and learned about NBCC, and it just so happened that the annual summit was going to be taking place in a couple of months from when I happened on the NBCC website. So I attended my first NBCC summit 2 years ago, and then at the summit, first of all, it blew me away. The program blew me away. The advocates and the quality of the program and the quality of the grassroots network. As someone who works in the field, I was just very impressed by what NBCC had to offer, and met several advocates while I was at the summit, and they encouraged me to attend Project LEAD that summer. So I applied to Project LEAD, which there's a program that Michelle runs, and we'll probably talk about more later. But I applied to Project LEAD, and I attended that summer, and then got to meet NBCC's president, Fran Visco, at the course of being at Project LEAD, and we ended up meeting for breakfast once we were back in DC, and it just sort of all happened from there. There was an opportunity available as the chief policy officer at NBCC, so I just sort of, I found it to be a very synchronistic is the word, way that everything just sort of fell together, and and it's been great. And like I said, I continue to be really impressed with the quality of our advocates and the work that we're doing here in Washington, D.C.
Wonderful. As you both mentioned regarding Summit and Project LEAD, I've had the opportunity to attend Summit both in person and last year virtually, with the world, kind of changing to that platform. And again, like you mentioned, Melanie, it is an eye-opening experience, and you gain a wealth of knowledge from the individuals who are presenting and the advocates who you are seated with on a day-to-day basis. And I just appreciate being able to have that experience and the level of understanding that it's given me on this platform and this journey. I represent the state of Wisconsin, so I've been an opportunity to work on that level, on the state level, and nationally. I was just wondering if you could maybe just share, and Melanie, this time we'll begin with you, just a little bit about what it takes to kind of put those programs on, and for future breast cancer advocates or anyone who may be viewing that is a current survivor, specifically talk about what the National Summit is all about, and Project Lead, how one would become involved in that and what it takes. So if you all want to kind of just kind of go back and forth and share your personal experiences and your professional experiences within your roles.
Sure. Well, I focus really, and Michelle can talk more about the programmatic side of the summit and of Project Lead. I really focus on the advocacy and the grassroots component of that, and that is well, for the last year and this year, it's a virtual lobby day. Normally, we send busloads of advocates up to Capitol Hill, and we're meeting with members and their staff in person, and advocating. NBCC has a list of policy priorities that the board adopts every year. We've just gone through that process for 2021. So anybody who's watching who's interested in the issues that NBCC focuses on, you can just go to our website. It's www.stopbreastcancer.org, and you'll find our policy priorities there. But anyway, we organize, we train our advocates very well. That's one of the things congressional staffers tell me all the time, is how impressed they are by how well prepared NBCC advocates are. And that's because there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that advocates are trained, that every question that they have gets answered, that they have the materials they need. Sometimes, you know, when you're not someone who does lobbying every day, it can be a very intimidating thing to think about. Going up to Capitol Hill is a very imposing building, and it can seem intimidating, but we try to make it as easy as possible. And we do hear from our advocates that they mostly have very positive experiences, and it's very empowering. I think when you first feel intimidated by it, and then you go and you meet with these, oftentimes you're meeting with staffers, and the first thing you learn is that it's very young people who actually run what's going on in Washington, D.C. But you come away from that experience and you feel very empowered. And most folks are, raring to go and do it again. So that's the component of it that I focus on: the lobby day, the preparation for lobby day, and all of the activities that kind of flow afterwards from lobby day. And Michelle can talk more about the science side, I think, of Summit and of Project Lead.
Right. So, I mean, when you think about so I'm the chief programs officer at NBCC. And so as Melanie mentioned, I sort of head up and lead the summit and the educational programs and some of the other research activities that NBCC is involved with. But I think, our organization has this public policy division, and then it has this research and education branch, but they're really integrated. And so, I think at the very beginning of NBCC, we pushed for a lot of public policy related issues, and Melanie can speak to this even better than I can, but the establishment of the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program. Our advocates, our grassroots advocates, were very instrumental in helping to bring that program about. But what we realized early on is that we can't just, have these push for these kinds of things, we need to also educate the advocates to be very involved in the decision making that goes on around breast cancer, and to, so I think the educational programs that we provide, for instance, Project Lead, which was established in 1996, was the when that first started, was really all aimed at giving advocates the education and training that they needed to feel confident when they were involved in decision making around breast cancer. So that's why I say that the public policy side that Melanie leads is very intertwined with the programs. We want to educate our advocates to make sure that they are confident and have a voice when they're able to participate in research, advocacy, public policy, all the things that we want to do. We want to make sure that women and men with breast cancer have a voice, and we want to make sure that they have the capacity and the confidence to engage in those conversations. So our summit, which is something that's been going on since it started out as an advocate conference, first of all, for many years, and then we migrated to an advocate leadership summit in the I guess it was around 2013 or so. And that's really a place for our advocates to come and get premier training, to hear about the real issues involved in breast cancer, to learn about the science, to engage in skill building activities and workshops, and really to just continue that education. Many of the individuals who go to our summit, that may have been the first exposure that they had to NBCC, if they really like the science part of it, we encourage them to go to Project Lead, which is something that we run once a year. And Project Lead is really an intense science and research training, and it's really meant to help shape advocates to participate in research advocacy, to participate in peer review, to participate as partners in clinical trials. And so we have our science education, and then we have our public policy education that Melanie heads up. So those are our sort of major programs.
Awesome. I am looking forward to participating in Project Lead. I did get the go-ahead going now virtual. I'm looking forward to that opportunity coming to fruition, and just hearing you speak about it a little bit more in depth just gives me great pleasure in being accepted for that opportunity. So thank you, ladies.
Right.
I was just wondering if maybe one of you could just kind of break down like a day in the life for Lobby Day. I know we spoke about leading up to like with the training and everything, but is it possible to just kind of just give like a brief synopsis of what the actual Lobby Day would look like for someone, who may be listening today?
Sure. So I guess I'll describe it first in what it would be like in a non-pandemic world. Okay. Normally, Lobby Day happens in conjunction with our annual summit, and it happens at the conclusion of summit. So the summit program would take place, and then there's about a day and a half of activities that focus specifically on Lobby Day. And so there's a Lobby Day briefing where we talk about all of the issues that we're going to the Hill on, and that will vary from year to year depending on what's been introduced in Congress, where things are in the process, that sort of thing. So we will have a detailed prepared agenda for people, and we have a briefing that goes over all of that, and really just tries to get people excited to go to the Hill. And then there are a series of state delegation meetings where you meet with your state leadership. And so Dana mentioned team leader training. Team leader training is a program, an advocacy program that is available to advocates who have participated with NBCC, who have attended the summit, who have attended Lobby Day, and maybe they want to actually become advocacy leaders within their state or region. And so there's an application process for that. And once a year we hold trainings for team leaders. And then once you're a team leader, you're expected to help organize lobby day meetings. In some cases, you may lead lobby day meetings. We don't send anybody up to the Hill unless they've been through on their own without an NBCC staff person or without another team leader who's been trained. Because again, we want to maintain our reputation. We want to make sure that the people that are going and meeting with members of Congress and their staff are representing well the National Breast Cancer Coalition. So that's kind of preparation up to lobby day. And then if it were in the real world, we have a kind of what we call a hangout spot. We have a room reserved up on Capitol Hill where people can leave their luggage, and we have food available all day. And usually this takes place in May, so it can be hot and humid in Washington, D.C. You can come enjoy some air conditioning and cold beverages. And so we have our hangout spot. Advocates are coming and going all day because there are Hill meetings that are taking place. The way Washington is set up, there you've got the Senate office buildings on one side of the Capitol complex and the House office buildings on the other side of the complex, and people are sort of back and forth all day. And then when we come back to our meeting room, we have lobby day reports that are filled out so that we can keep track of the conversations that have happened. And then we usually sort of have sort of a closing at the end of the day where we sort of celebrate the fact that we've, usually held over 200, sometimes over 300 Capitol Hill meetings all in one day. So that's what it looks like in the real world meaning non-COVID world. In the COVID world, we do this all just like we're doing this. We do it on Zoom. The nice thing about that is you're not traipsing back and forth across the Capitol. You can actually get more meetings in a day because you're just moving from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. But again, last year, I think for virtual lobby day, we had about 200 Zoom meetings all on one day. We had many with members of Congress. One of the things now about being virtual is oftentimes the members have more time. And so they'll show up on a Zoom meeting. So that's kind of what it looks like.
I'll just pipe in and say that I had never lobbied until I started at NBCC, and I lobbied after my first summit with NBCC for Virginia, and then again after our virtual summit last year. And I mean, it was I think Melanie said it perfectly. It's so empowering. You're going in and meeting with your representatives and your senators, and asking them for things that you believe they should support. You're their constituent, and it is an empowering experience, and one of my favorite things out of the summit every year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, it was an extreme pleasure, and I look forward to this opportunity going forward, which again will be virtual, but we're working very diligently in Wisconsin to make certain that this one is memorable as well. So thank you for sharing that perspective.
Great.
So you both mentioned earlier in our conversation that you are breast cancer survivors. I was wondering if you could just kind of just give me a little bit of what your experience was with your caregivers and appointments and things of that nature, and how you would be able to offer maybe just a little bit of a glimmer of hope for those who may be recently diagnosed, or perhaps caregivers who are listening, and what your experiences were that you could offer and share your experience for them.
Well,
Michelle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was 37 when I first found a lump underneath my arm, and had no clue what it was. Had a mammogram to make sure that I didn't have any kind of breast cancer and I certainly didn't think that I did. And it was a negative mammogram, a normal mammogram, I should say. And so I went in and had the lump underneath my arm removed. And when they studied it, discovered that it was actually breast cancer. And within a week, I had gone in and had all the pre-workup just to make sure that it hadn't spread beyond the lymph nodes, which is where it was when they identified it. And like I said, within a week, I was having surgery. The care that I had was very good. And my oncologist was excellent. And I will say that that time frame from first finding the lump, because nobody really thought it was breast cancer. They thought, oh, it'll probably go away. Took several months. So I think I found it in the spring, and I was not having surgery until late September. So, you know, and I think that was part of what made me really want to get involved, because I couldn't believe that I had breast cancer at the age of 38 at that point when I had my surgery. You know, it would never have occurred to me that I would develop breast cancer. And like I say, my mammogram was normal. So that was the thing that really made me want to share my story and make sure that people were aware that this could happen to them. But I knew nothing really about breast cancer at the time. And I knew absolutely nothing about breast cancer advocacy. So when I did finally have the opportunity to get involved, which was only about 2.5 years ago, it's just been such an eye-opener for me. And I really value working at NBCC and the work that NBCC does, and the truth that it seeks to promote about breast cancer. And, you know, I'm a researcher by background, and so it's just been a perfect fit for me. But going back to my treatment, my treatment was excellent, you know, and I think, you know, the vast majority of people who are diagnosed will be able to be treated. So that's the one, I guess, glimmer of hope that I would like to put out there. There are aggressive forms of breast cancer, which are, you know, very difficult to treat, especially once it's metastatic. But, you know, just being aware of your body and, you know, if something's not right, you know, going in and making sure that you get it tested, no matter how young you are, I think it's something that I would promote. But, Melanie?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Melanie?
Right. So I was diagnosed now, again, it was about 4 years ago. And I was diagnosed essentially off of a mammogram. And so for me, it's felt like everything it's sort of in some ways the opposite of Michelle's experience. It seemed like things happened very fast. You know, you had your mammogram, immediately there was biopsies and tests and doctor's appointments. And I was working full time as a lobbyist at a large trade association, a demanding job. And I worked completely through my treatment. And I guess looking back on it, and I think at the time that was my personality, just sort of, this is just one more problem that needs to be solved and one more project that needs to be managed. So, and one more sort of to-do list to have check boxes checked off of. And that's sort of the way I handled it. I just sort of put my head down and started doing it. I think I already knew that there were problems with the healthcare system. You know, luckily I had excellent insurance and I had excellent care, and didn't experience what many people experience as far as financial toxicity, or, you know, basically had everything I needed. I had, you know, my family and took excellent care of me going through treatment. But I know, and I met women sort of along, you know, while I was going through this that did not have that same experience. And, you know, and even though I was so fortunate to have, you know, basically have everything I needed, it still was an incredibly bureaucratic, difficult sometimes, you know, especially for someone who is working full time. And I kind of joke, I said the one thing in retrospect that I really could have used was a cancer personal assistant, because doctors' offices don't take voicemail. You know, I'd leave a message and then I'd go into a meeting. I'd be playing phone tag all day, trying to get appointments scheduled, and then an appointment would schedule and they would reschedule me. And you know, it took a few stern talkings to with my oncology team to let them understand, like, I'm working full time, like you have to work with me. I can't be just scheduled on a random day, like, because I would basically plan my chemotherapy so that I'd be sick on the weekends, or if not feel well on the weekends.
Yes.
Wow.
That kind of thing. So from that perspective, you just see where where there are areas for changing of the healthcare system, which is, again, why doing what I do at NBCC is so meaningful to me. And I guess the other just personal thing I would say about it is, God forbid I should ever have to do this again. I guess the thing I would learn is I really was, as I said, kind of put my head down, and I didn't really ask for or accept a lot of help. And looking back on it, I probably could have used help, and it would have been a lot easier on me if I had been willing to ask and accept help. So for people that are just out there now and sort of starting it, ask for help. Ask people to walk your dog if you need to do that, or send you some takeout, or whatever it is. Just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, that was, and my treatment was more than 12 years ago now. And I have, as I say, a research background. And at the time, I really didn't know a lot about breast cancer. And there's so many questions. You should not be afraid to ask questions about your treatments.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. As we begin to wrap up, are there any last minute thoughts that you would care to share from your personal experiences, or from the national level, or in regards to the Metastatic Breast Cancer Act bill, that you just care to share for our listeners, so that we can just leave them with a little more information as to why it's so important for us to be aware and making certain that breast cancer advocacy is an important factor?
So I'll speak to the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act briefly. So that's legislation that NBCC authored. It was introduced in the last Congress, but did not get enacted. So we are now working to get it reintroduced in this new Congress that just started in January. And this is a bill that if you are under the age of 65 and you lose your job and you've lost your health care, you would be, and you have metastatic breast cancer, which is breast cancer that's spread to another part of your body, and is the form of cancer that most people die from. Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think the average life expectancy of someone with metastatic breast cancer is 3 years. Right now, if you've lost your insurance and you need to go on Medicare, there's a waiting period. You first have to file for Social Security disability insurance, and that takes some time just to apply and get approved. And then there's a 5-month waiting period to get Social Security disability insurance. And then there's also a 2-year, 24-month waiting period to become eligible for Medicare. And these waiting periods were put in place really for the, not in the case of a pretty much fatal disease like metastatic breast cancer, but for things like an injury that you might recover from. They didn't want people getting on to Medicare, getting this insurance when they could get it from other sources. And that's just not the situation for people who have metastatic breast cancer, who have no other form of health insurance. They really need this insurance. So we have legislation that would waive these waiting periods, because these people have already become eligible for the benefit. They are just waiting. And a 24-month waiting period, many times women and men die while they're waiting to get healthcare coverage. That could enhance the quality of the life expectancy that they have left.
Yes.
Well, I guess what I would say, just in closing, is that if you're interested in advocacy, again, I knew nothing, when I was going through breast cancer. if you're interested in advocacy and you're interested in the science and you're interested in public policy and helping to push things like the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act, reach out to NBCC. We have many resources, and we're always welcoming additional advocates to join this fight. Our mission is to end breast cancer, and we need to have a strong grassroots advocacy network to be able to do that.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank you ladies again for joining me and taking time out of your day and just giving us a perspective from the national level. Again, my name is Dana Johnson. I'm your host of Pink Perspectives, powered by the Pink Table Talk, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Pink Table Talk will be offering our fabulously scented, custom labeled Pink Table Talk candle. Each one hand poured by Cheyenne Candles as a symbol of continuous support to the causes and awareness of breast cancer. The candle light, we'd like to say, represents an eternal flame that will burn in memory to the lives lost and in commemoration to those who continue the fight with cancer and our never-ending crusade to bring awareness. Proceeds from purchasing go to the building of the Pink Table Talk advocacy and outreach, as well as our ability to support other programs and agencies in kind. Thank you for joining us.